Welcome back. All right, so we're going to talk about one player from every team today. I want to talk about players who I feel like maybe you're flying under the radar a little bit, players that I want to spotlight as well. I do like to do this occasionally throughout the season, getting into which players that I really like that maybe aren't being talked about, that kind of thing. So, yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. Now, how I have this arranged is the reverse order of the standings. So, Calgary is first, and it ends with Colorado. There's 8 teams in every column. All right, let's go ahead and jump in, and we'll talk about Calgary. Now, I'm going to put point totals up for everybody, but the point totals aren't necessarily what I want to highlight. And with Calgary, I wanted to highlight the player as much as anything else, and that's Klapka. Klapka's played 17 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. Now, it is true that if Calgary was a better team, maybe Klapka's not in the lineup every night, but the effort's there. He's a big guy. And honestly, I think there might be a little bit more offense in terms of his capability there. I could see him getting 10 goals, 20 points. I could see that. And that's not bad, considering the state that the Flames are in and everything. I think Klapka's going out and showing them, that effort's really important. And so, yeah, that's the player I wanted to highlight from the Flames. From Nashville. So, while Nashville has had a tough time of it, that's why I'm talking about them second, because they're 31st overall. Matthew Wood, young player, 11 games, 6 goals, 4 assists, 10 points. He's certainly not getting as much attention as other players in the Calder running, because he's only played the 11 games so far for Nashville. But when he's been in the lineup, he's been very effective and clearly has some good offensive instincts. And so while things in Nashville aren't fantastic with the season going as it's gone and some of the contracts they have, I don't think there's any complaints about Matthew Wood. Which brings us to Buffalo. Yeah, I had to work at it with Buffalo. So there's skaters for every team except Buffalo. I wanted to talk about Lyon. So in terms of their skaters, I feel like I've talked about them enough. But Lyon is doing what he has to keep them competitive. He has a 3-5-3 record, but he has a 9-12 save percentage. I think Lyon's had a good year with Buffalo so far. Just the team in front of him hasn't had a great year. If Lyon can keep up those numbers, and if they can start improving on both sides of the puck, I would say, who knows, right? And that's as far as I'll go with Buffalo. I will make 0 playoff predictions. I will make 0 predictions they're going to get close to the playoffs. The closest I get to optimism with the Sabres this day is, well, who knows? And I'm sure there are Sabre fans going, we know, and I get it. St. Louis. For St. Louis, I picked Suter. So St. Louis has had their struggles, and definitely there's a lot of heat on some players, and likely from fans towards maybe management, coaching, and whatnot. But Suter has been an excellent pickup. 17 games, 5 goals, 5 assists, 10 points. If he has 20 goals and 40 points this year, that's pretty good for a player who was brought in to solidify their center spot. I think Suter's done that. He is actually the number 1 scorer, too, which surprised me a little bit. And I say a little bit because Thomas has obviously missed some games with injury. He hasn't quite been up to par points-wise. And Kyrou, another disappointing start for Kyrou. So I think Suter's been a good addition, and it's nice to see him keep it going. I wish he'd stayed in Vancouver. Speaking of which, Vancouver's next. So in terms of the overall standings, 4 of the bottom 5 teams are in the West, so go West. But for Vancouver, and if you're a Vancouver fan, I don't think you're going to be surprised to see me writing Drew O'Connor's name on the board. 18 games, 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points. O'Connor's been excellent for the Canucks lately, and while the Canucks have had their challenges when it comes to recording wins this season, and especially in regulation, the reality is that I think O'Connor's put in the hard work. And the Canucks, if they're going to get close to a playoff spot, they're going to require a lot of hard work from these players. I don't think they get there, but if everybody works like O'Connor does, they have a chance. Which brings us to Toronto. How is Toronto this low in the standings is, I think, a valid question. Now, there's a lot of shade thrown towards their defense. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think McCabe is a good defenseman. And while there's a lot of dislike thrown towards Morgan Riley, and I get it, I don't see that with McCabe, and I also get that. 17 games, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points for McCabe. More than a point every other game is good. And defensively, he's good as well. So I do like McCabe, and 9 points in 17 games isn't bad. So the conversation about Morgan Rielly is always going to be out there with him with the Leafs. And there may be some conversations to be had about Matthews at some point too. Although Jeff Follett today was talking on social media about how basically for Toronto, Matthews and Nylander are putting up the best advanced numbers, and in terms of goals at 5-on-5, they're really good. But I wanted to focus on McCabe today. I wanted to throw that bit in there too. Columbus. I do think there's an overabundance of criticism towards star players in general, and I just wanted to point that out. Columbus, not a superstar player here either. It's Coyle. Charlie Coyle, 16 games, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. So the same amount of points as McCabe and one game less. I think Coyle's been good for Columbus. And I think he's having a better start to this year than he had a finish to the last season. So it does look like Coyle's pretty comfortable in Columbus. We'll see if that continues to be the case. Obviously, I think they'd prefer to have maybe 4 goals from him instead of 2. But either way, I think Coyle's been a good fit so far with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Which brings us to Florida. Now, Florida's had trouble with their production, but I'm going to focus on this player because I have always looked at Sabrango, and it goes back to his draft year. I looked at Sabrango's numbers, I looked at the draft profile, and I was like, this guy looks like he could be a decent defenseman. He could end up being a steal in the draft. Well, that didn't work out, obviously. He ends up on waivers and goes to Florida on waivers. In Florida, in 5 games, he has 2 assists, and he's a +5. And he's a +5 on a Florida team that doesn't have a lot of guys with great plus-minuses right now while they're awaiting the returns of both Tkachuk and Barkov. So, yeah, Sabrango, 2 assists in 5 games. And 5 points, or +5, I should say, on top of the 2 points in 5 games. It feels like Florida has this ability. I don't know that he's going to be the next Forsling, but nobody thought much of Forsling going there either at the time it happened. So, who knows? Maybe Florida's got themselves another steal here. Washington. For Washington, I'm going with a call-up. I know that Ethan Frank is unlikely to spend the whole season with the Washington Capitals. He's only played 5 games this season. Has played some games for Hershey, I believe, as well. 3 assists for Frank, but I'm always impressed by his work ethic and his speed. And so I do think there's a place in the NHL for him, even if his offensive numbers don't end up translating to the NHL to the point where he's going to be like a top 6 forward. You still need good bottom 6 forwards, and having speed in your bottom 6 is important. So I like Frank's game. I hope he gets a chance. I do. I did say that about Hunter Shepard a couple years ago for Washington, and then it didn't quite work out in the NHL. But he looked so good in Hershey and in the playoffs and everything. Just didn't work out for him at the NHL level. For Minnesota, hasn't been a lot of great stories with Minnesota this season. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mention Johansson, who had his 1,000th game ceremony and all that the other night. But in 18 games, he's got 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points. Those are excellent numbers. I'm not sure how Johansson's getting better as he gets older. I don't know that he keeps this up. But he's been impressive on a Minnesota team that needs more guys that are impressive. So this is one of those work ethic things. Johansson's never been one that'll wow you with pure skill. But if he's dialed in and he's working hard, and if he's got his confidence with him, he can definitely produce. For Detroit, I'm going with somebody who's not producing. And I am full out admitting he's not producing. But my gosh, I have seen so many opportunities for Marco Kasper that have almost gone in the net. 3 goals in 16 games so far, no assists either. So he's not getting any puck luck when it comes to when he's past it. I still think Kasper can be a good player and a top 6 forward. And I still think that's the case, even though the numbers this year have not been encouraging. What ends up happening is either he does match those numbers, or he ends up being traded to a team I cheer for, and he never hits those numbers. That generally seems to be the case with young players. But yeah, Casper, 3 goals in 16 games. I don't think that tells you. I think Casper's playing better than that. I can imagine there'll be some comments under this video about some of the players I pick. Casper might be one of them, but I do pick different players. Tampa. I don't think we talk enough about Cirelli. And the reason I don't think we talk enough about Cirelli is that he's got 14 games this year, 7 goals, 4 assists, 11 points. He's scoring a goal every other game. Anthony Cirelli is just a very talented forward. And I think the defensive side of his game gets a lot of attention, and he gets a lot of discussion as being a good two-way forward and, being in the Selke discussion. But we don't talk enough about just the pure offensive talent he has as well. I think he has the speed, he has the ability to make plays, and I think his offense is undersold. So I wanted to put Cirelli on the board. For the New York Islanders, so they traded Dobson. I don't know that we expected this from Heineman. I don't know that they expected this from Heineman, to be honest. 16 games, 6 goals, 4 assists, 10 points. Solid numbers. 50. If he ends up with a 50-point season, the Islanders are going to be very happy with the acquisition of Heineman, because Schaefer has clearly replaced whatever Dobson would have brought to the table, and then some. Schaefer is definitely an upgrade over Dobson. No offense to Dobson, and it is still early, so maybe Schaefer has a tougher second half than first half. But Heineman's been a good addition for the Islanders. I think there's some smart moves being made by the Islanders organization. They got a little bit younger this year, too. For Vegas, it's hard to find somebody that I can look at and say, well, they're playing well, and it's not being talked about. But I don't think we talk enough about what Barbashev does for them. Barbashev, 15 games played, 7 goals, 9 assists, 16 points. Yeah, he's above a point per game. Barbashev being above a point per game is mildly surprising. I say mildly because he is getting top-line time with the Vegas Golden Knights. So not a huge surprise that he'd be putting up totals that are higher than we would normally see from him. But yeah, Barbashev, it's been a good run for him this season. I have to give my rabbit a treat. I'm not sure what I did. I did something that has Cinnabon thinking that she's getting a treat, and when that happens, she will climb my leg and scratch at my leg until I fear, which just encourages further harassment. Okay, so we'll move on to San Jose's player. you won't see that on Sportsnet or ESPN. Take that. Okay, we'll move on. San Jose. I'll pause to scratch my nose. I won't pause to feed the rabbit. Orlov is my pick for San Jose. So when Orlov went to San Jose, his stock was low. But with the 11 assists he's put up in 17 games, I think Orlov's having the best year he's had in a few years. And so if San Jose decides to keep him at the deadline because they're close to the playoffs and he can help them maybe get above the line, great. If they fall off the pace and they end up moving him at the trade deadline, they're going to get something back. This is a player that I think they've improved the stock of. And I think San Jose's improved their defense greatly this year. Over what we saw last season, and especially what we saw a couple years ago. So, yeah, Orlov, 11 assists, 17 games. For Philadelphia, another defenseman. Am I on a run with defenseman? No, not yet. But I do pick defenseman, and for Philadelphia, apologies if this is one you expected me to put up there, but I like talking about Cam York. I do feel like he doesn't get a lot of attention. A goal and 9 assists for 10 points in 13 games. That's pretty respectable for Cam York. I've been a fan of his game for years, so I do think he's a little bit underrated in NHL circles at this point in time. Which brings us to the halfway mark. So if you want to pause, go have yourself a bit of, a little bit of soda or have yourself a sandwich. Go ahead. And you can come back and we can start things again with Seattle. All right, Seattle it is. Because you can pause it, so it doesn't matter when I start again. All right, Matty Beniers. Now, what's interesting is, Beniers, the numbers offensively are still not fantastic. Okay, so now she's had her snack, she's going to eat cardboard. Beniers, 16 games, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points for Beniers. I don't think that tells the whole story. I think Beniers has become a better player this year. I think that part of the reason Seattle's in the hunt for a playoff spot is that improved play from Beniers. It hasn't translated to goals yet. I think that it will. It's just we're not there at this point in time. Edmonton. So it took a while for Roslovic to find a home. And now that we're seeing how he's playing in Edmonton, it seems weird that it took a while for him to find a home. 16 games, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points. I just don't understand why no GM wanted to give him multiple years. That's the part I don't understand, unless they thought last year was kind of a fluke and they wanted to see. 16 games, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points. Maybe last year wasn't a fluke. Maybe Roslovic can get back to those numbers with Edmonton this year. And if he does, the Oilers are going to be very happy. Obviously, getting that depth of scoring has been an issue for Edmonton since forever. And so adding Roslovic as a free agent didn't cost them anything to do it other than cap space. And he's fit in pretty well. And he's got overtime goals in back-to-back games. For the New York Rangers, so I'm in an interesting spot with Lafreniere. I don't know that Lafreniere will ever reach the offensive limits of what was expected when he was drafted. And this season, 18 games, 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points. But when I put together the video on the Rangers and the season they were having, Lafreniere's numbers, I almost said Laferriere, and then I caught myself, then I almost said it again. Lafreniere, I think because of the numbers he's putting up on the road being pretty good, if he can even that up at home, I don't know that he gets to point per game this year, but he can get close. He has 12 points in 18 games, which is not awful. And so I do think for Lafreniere, we could see him reach point per game this season, or at least close to it, as long as they improve their play at home and we start seeing the goals go in at home, which we did in that game against Nashville. Maybe that's a sign of things turning around for the New York Rangers. For Ottawa, so I don't think we talk enough about Drake Batherson, so I want to talk about him here because he keeps getting better. And this year's no exception. 14 games, 6 goals, 11 assists, 17 points. In most cases, I'm not putting anybody on the board that's got a ton of points because they're already being talked about. I don't feel like there's importance to me talking about them since everybody else is already talking about them. But people aren't talking about Batherson like I think they should. Stützle gets a lot of attention. Stützle should get a lot of attention. He's a superstar. Batherson's becoming a superstar as well. Batherson is producing goals in a timely manner. He's got more than a point per game. If he can keep that up, I think they have something going on in Ottawa. For the LA Kings, I don't know how. I just don't understand Corey Perry. Corey Perry has been ridiculous as a King. 11 games, 7 goals, 4 assists, 11 points. Corey Perry is 78 years of age. There's no way in heck that he's not. I'm just kidding. But there's no way that a 78-year-old man should be getting a point per game. It feels like he's been around that long. But he's a point per game player. And these aren't like just, points that are just garbage goals and he's just had some luck. No, he's been prominent. He's been in the highlight reels. He's looking really good. I would say this is the best Perry's played in a long time offensively. He's definitely played well overall in recent seasons too, but he's turned the clock back offensively in LA thus far, and so I wanted to chat about that a little bit. Part of the reason LA has had a strong run recently is to play Corey Perry. Chicago. For the Chicago Blackhawks, so reliability and consistency are big. I talk about it a lot in videos. Teravainen, 17 games, 3 goals, 9 assists, 12 points. Teuvo Teravainen, you know what you're going to get. He's not bad defensively. He's pretty good offensively. You're probably going to get between 50 and 60 points at this stage of his career. And for Chicago, that works. For Chicago, that's great. He's not going to challenge Bedard for the lead in scoring on the team, of course, but he is an asset. He's a good player. Chicago bringing him back so far seems like it was a really smart idea. And so, yeah, I think Teuvo Teravainen deserves a little bit of attention on the board today for being as consistent as he's been, and he's a pretty talented forward. For Utah, all right, I've talked about Lawson Krause before. I have. I've talked about Lawson Krause a lot, but there's a reason. I still think Lawson Krause, who has 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points in 17 games, he should be a 30-goal scorer. For his shot, for his ability, and for his work ethic, Krause should be scoring a lot more goals than he does. And this year's no exception. He does have the 4 goals. I think there's more there. I think there's more there. And I will keep saying it, and I'll keep saying it. And at some point in time, Krause records a 30-goal season, and I can say, cool. And then I can just retire. I can be like, yeah, I'm good. Krause got his 30-point season, or 30-goal season, I should say, and I can retire. I'm not going to retire if Krause hits 30 goals. No. All right, but I might think about it. Maybe I'll take a week off. Niederreiter is my pick for the Winnipeg Jets. Or, when I'm writing notes on the board, I just write Nino. Because I don't think there's any other NHL players named Nino. None come to mind anyways. No offense to anybody named Nino or any hockey players named Nino. But Niederreiter, 16 games, 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 points. One thing that I like with the Winnipeg Jets, they just have a lot of depth. They have a lot of good, skilled forwards who just go out there and put up their points. And Niederreiter's one of those guys. You're going to get about 50 points from him. I kind of did a double take the other night when they were talking about Nemesnikov and how offensively minded Nemesnikov is. And I'm thinking, that's definitely a Winnipeg thing. Nemesnikov wasn't really seen as an offensively minded or gifted player. But Winnipeg definitely brings out the best in these players. And I think Nino's been excellent since arriving in Winnipeg. So I wanted to put his name on the board because I do think he's overlooked a little bit for how productive he can be. So we get to the final column. So the top 8. For Pittsburgh, a player who's really impressed me lately. And it's interesting because the blue line in Pittsburgh coming into this season was seen as one of their question marks. But Shea, 17 games, 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points. And I think Shea's got better as the weeks have rolled along this season. So that's been impressive. It's definitely been a part of the reason why Pittsburgh's been impressive as they have been. Can Shea keep it up? We'll see if he can keep it up through a full season. But right now he's on pace for about 40 points. That's pretty good. So good on Shea for that. For Boston, I went back and forth on Boston. There are a few players. But there's one player in particular I think is having a career year. And that's Eyssimont. Eyssimont, 18 games, 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points. If I had said before the season 40 points for Eyssimont, there would have been some chuckling. But that's what he's on. He's on pace for about 40 points. I don't know that he gets there. I think Boston's been on a heater recently, so I think it's brought up some of these point totals for players. But work ethic's there. Definitely has more offensive ability than I think we've seen when he's had previous teams employing him. And Eyssimont is a good example of why I don't get too worried about if the NHL does decide to expand, just from a talent perspective. There's enough talent to go around. That's my opinion. I know it's an opinion that other people may not share, but Eyssimont a player that with more ice time, it seems to have brought out the best in him. At least I assume there's more ice time in Boston than there has been previously elsewhere. At the very least, he's getting special teams time on the power play in Boston. I don't know that he's had a lot of special teams power play time before arriving in Boston. For Montreal, I think it's great Montreal and Boston are right next to each other in the standings. Just saying this is fantastic. They play each other this weekend. I'm kind of excited because both teams are relevant. And when both teams are relevant, Boston and Montreal play each other, they smash into each other and they hate each other, and it's great. Montreal. Newhook. I'm going with Newhook because I do feel like he's been maligned at times. And I get it. But Newhook this year in 16 games has 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points. I think Newhook has been a big part of the success of the Montreal Canadiens. Kirby Dach gets an honorable mention for that as well. Strong run by Doc the month of November, and just overall, I think he's played well. But Newhook, I think, deserves a lot of credit for Montreal's really strong run so far this year, and we'll see if he can keep that up. But that's on pace for 60 points. So I think Montreal fans and Montreal management would be fine with Newhook getting 60 points if that is in fact the case. For Carolina, I'm going to go with a veteran that's been a favorite of mine for a long time. And I don't think that people appreciate Jordan Staal as much as they maybe should. Maybe part of it is that he plays in Carolina, and Carolina's a location that gets a little less attention than a lot of others. But Jordan Staal, 16 games, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points. He's never going to be a big point producer, we know that. But he is one of the hardest workers in the game. And honorable mention to Martinook, I guess, if we're going to talk about hardworking Carolina players too. But if you need a big face-off one, you throw Jordan Staal in the ice. He's a very smart player, very, very sound defensively, and so he's on the board for Carolina as we get towards the end of this. We go to Dallas. Dallas is tough because I do feel like most of the players in Dallas that are playing well are already well known. We already know who they are. Hritscovian, though, not necessarily. So he's played 16 games. He just has the 2 goals. I think Hritscovian can score at a better rate than that. I do. I think that with the hard work that's put in by Hritscovian every shift, I think there's the potential for at least a few more points as the year rolls along. And I'm never going to malign a player who kind of comes out of nowhere, wins himself a roster spot, and plays every game on a team that's considered a contender for the Stanley Cup. So Hritscovian has been a good story, I think, for the Dallas Stars. I understand that might seem like a bit of a reach for some, but if you think that's a reach, you must be new to the channel. Welcome. Anaheim, because I do that with every video of this nature. Anaheim, I'm going to talk about a player that I'm surprised people aren't talking about, and that's Troy Terry. Why? Well, Troy Terry, 16 games, 5 goals, 15 assists, 20 points. Troy Terry is on pace for 100 points this season. Yep, 10 points every 8 games gets you to 100 points, and he has 20 points in 16 games. Terry's passing skill, the 15 assists in 16 games, fantastic. And with the development of Gauthier, the development of Carlson, I think that Terry deserves a lot of credit for being a veteran player that stuck around in Anaheim when he could have gone elsewhere, and he's seen the rebuild through, and now he's benefiting from playing with these really talented young players, and it's nice to see him above the point per game mark. Seeing Terry's numbers finally matching up with his talent level. For New Jersey, I'm going to go with Gritsuk. Gritsuk is a very interesting story to me. So I'll put up his numbers first and then we'll discuss. 17 games, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points. During the preseason, Gritsuk had some errors and some games that maybe didn't go as well as he would have hoped, or definitely that the team would have hoped. But he's learned. And Gritsuk has learned quickly. And I feel like with him being on the top line for New Jersey last night, and just the skill, the speed that he has to his game, Gritsuk's going to be one to watch the rest of the way, too. He's not going to end up in the Calder discussion, certainly. I get that. But don't count out Grzelcyk, the defenseman in Chicago. Gritsuk. So this is me on 3 hours of sleep, so I'm going to apologize for any names that I misspeak with. The rest of the time, I just make those mistakes because I'm old. But yeah, Gritsuk, I've been impressed with how he seems to get better with each game, how he seems to be learning the NHL game at a very quick rate, and the mistakes he made in the preseason, which were preseason mistakes, those seem to be out of his game. All right, which brings us to Colorado. Number 1, as all Colorado fans will tell you, I imagine Avs fans just walking around randomly, finding people on the streets and going, have you heard about the Habs? Or Habs. The Avs. See, there you go. The Habs. The Habs suck now because the Avs are great. Anyways, so with the Avs, the player I picked for Colorado, I've worked with a lot of people over the years that have talked about the Habs every day. And so I think that's part of what that is. I'm used to Habs fans being like, hey, how are the Habs doing? And then they lose, and then they don't want to talk about it. So then I would start the conversation. How about the Habs? They lost. What, we're not talking about the Habs today? So Montreal. I'm going with a player that I have talked about in previous seasons, Victor Olofsson. And Olofsson's start with Colorado, I have to say, this team, just, they make it work. 17 games for Olofsson, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points. Victor Olofsson being near a point per game is genuinely surprising to me. Shouldn't be, because it's Colorado. Looking at what they've done with Lehkonen and other forwards from other teams, I shouldn't be as surprised as I've been with Olofsson, but he looks great. So, yeah, Colorado's done a good job of being number one in the National Hockey League, being the team everybody's chasing. And, yeah, we'll see if that continues. It should. The one thing to keep in mind, though, the one thing that is in the back of my mind is, okay, so they've had this great start. They've got one regulation loss so far this year. It reminds me of Winnipeg last year. Winnipeg was just steamrolling everybody. It was just a great run by Winnipeg. And then, I don't know, slowly but surely things started to not necessarily go great. And, of course, they were out in the second round. So, it is great to have these runs early in the season. There's no bad side of it. But you do have to watch for that letdown. There's always that letdown during any given season. And then you got to come out the other side and be better. So, Colorado hasn't had that letdown yet. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just steamroll. Maybe they record one regulation loss for the entire season. And we're talking about how ridiculous their record is come March and April. But I don't think so. But if they do, maybe Olofsson's a big part of the reason why. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.